Hey, everybody, I want to welcome you to our podcast today. I'm really excited about our topic. We're going to be talking about the 3 keys to unlocking excellence and capabilities in your team. And I have an expert with us here today, and that is Chanie Wilschanski. And she is a mom of 4 little kids and is the founder and CEO of her company, which is the School of Excellence. Her mission is to give school leaders and teachers the practical tools and strategies to create a transformation and a ripple effect in their lives and that of the children and the families that they serve. She holds a dual master's degree in education and special ed and has been working hands-on in this field for over a decade. She's been working in schools in 6 different continents and over 30 different countries, including Africa, Asia, Nigeria, Russia, China, and all over the US and Canada. And she's been featured on multiple media platforms, including NBC, WBAL TV, Inc., and others, as she continues to share the message of schools of excellence. So she is an expert in the childcare industry, but more importantly, she is an expert when it comes to creating, doing or taking care of leadership in your business, and also creating a culture for your team and making sure that you're getting the very best out of your employees. So, Connie, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, again, I'm really excited because I think one of the most important things you can do as a business owner is make sure that not only that you're a good leader, but that you set up systems and processes in place that you can help your employees do their very best, right?
Yes.
So,
absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about a little bit more about your background. We just gave a bio of you, but tell me a little bit of your story.
Yeah. So I love telling my story because there's so many different parts of it. But the first thing is like I came into the classroom when I was 19 years old and I started as an assistant teacher. And I really worked my way through all of the different parts of running a phenomenal school. So assistant teacher, lead teacher, mentoring other teachers and giving trainings and workshops, being an assistant director, executive director, and being in charge of multiple different people. And I think one of the beauties of being able to be on all sides of that is understanding the psychology and the deep nuance of the fears and frustrations of the teachers, of the director, of the assistant director, and what they're struggling with on a day-to-day basis. And I think such an important part of being a great leader, a leader of excellence, is someone who doesn't only find the potential and the capability in their people and have them rise to it, but they also understand what they're struggling with and what they want more of. If you think about any person, no matter their income level or whatever it is, someone who's making $50 million a year has very similar frustrations and fears to someone who's barely making anything. They have uncertainty, they have fear, they want, to be part of a tribe, they want to be, welcomed into their family. They all want the same exact thing, just on a different scale. And so as a leader in your school or in any organization, do you understand what your people want? What they worry about when they wake up in the morning, what their fears are when they leave work, just what they're struggling with? Because when we can understand that, that's how we truly unlock greatness. So I'm really grateful that I had that opportunity to be in all those different sides there. So I was in the classroom for a little over 8 years. I taught toddlers for many, many years. And then I went back to school to get a master's in early childhood and special education. And what I love about just learning about special education is every single classroom now has children with sensory behavior, impulsive behavior, ADD, any of those things. Every single classroom has at least 1 or 2 kids, and that's on the conservative scale. And because all of our classrooms are seeing more and more of that, and there's a bunch of different reasons why, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that screen time is like the new babysitter and kids are just not getting outside a lot. So they're not having that stimulation. But because teachers have that, they need to be so much more educated in strategies and hands-on, like, what do I do when the kid throws a block? Like, don't tell me like, oh, you need to be doing this and speak. No. Tell me, what do I do when the kid throws a block? What do I do when the parent walks in and has, a full-blown panic attack about X, Y, and Z, and I have 4 other crying kids, and I've also got a kid in the bathroom, doing his business. Like, what do I do then? And the school leader really needs to understand how to help the teacher. And these things in theory on how to build a culture, your core values, they don't help the person in the moment when the kid threw the block and the other kid's got a bulging bump coming here and dad's picking up in an hour. Like, that doesn't help me in that moment. So that's a big part of my background where it's like, I've been on all sides of that. There's almost nothing that I haven't seen yet. And so because of that, I really can share deep insight into here's what to do right now when the rubber meets the road. How do I help this teacher right now?
Oh, that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
I love that because, it's really amazing because, whether, like you said, whether you're a teacher and you're dealing with little kids, or whether you're, an employee of a company and you're dealing with an angry client, it's all the same, right? We all have those situations where it's like, oh man, what do I do right now? And unfortunately we can't, give them a manual that is
exactly
like the size of an encyclopedia and study this and this will tell you exactly what to do, which is kind of ironic because I don't know if you know, but I actually was a commercial airline pilot. And
I
flew
love people's backstories. It's so cool.
Right? So I flew jets all around the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And that's how it was in the airline. Like I literally carried around a 50-pound case of books. And it's like, okay, if the engine starts on fire, step 1, step 2, step 3, boom, 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 right? And that was okay. That was easy to do because we were dealing with mechanical things, right?
Exactly.
Not humans.
Yes.
So
I think leaders really need those better decision-making tools. And that's a big part of what I do when I'm working with leaders is I want to give you decision-making tools so that, because I can't think of every possible scenario, but I can give you better thinking tools so that you know how to think better. So you understand how to any problem that fits into this model, this is typically how we'll solve the problem. So I think leaders need a lot more better decision-making tools as opposed to how do I motivate and inspire and boost morale? Like we need better decision tools.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So we're talking about how to unlock excellence and the capabilities of your team. So what does excellence mean? If you were to define excellence, like what does that really mean?
So, I think there's so many different definitions, but for me, what excellence means is a person that is consistently striving for more and has this insatiable hunger and desire to want more for themselves. And whenever I see a leader who's like, everything's great, everything's great, like everything's smooth, there's no issues, there's no anything. And I'm like, girl, you got to dream bigger dreams. You need to dream bigger dreams. If everything is going amazing, high five. You need to dream bigger because that means the dreams that you thought of and the goals that you wanted, you've accomplished them. So now what? Now you just play it safe? No, you have 50 more years to live. Dream bigger dreams. So excellence is also about dreaming bigger and dreaming more of what you even think is humanly possible. Wow,
that's amazing. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I agree with that 100% because you do. Sometimes in your life and in business, you get to a point where you just settle a little bit and you're like, yeah, this is good and things are okay, and we can't do that. We can't let our employees do that, right?
No, because that's what excellence is. Dreaming bigger dreams. And you as the leader need to be the first person to, light the path of that dream and show people that dreaming bigger dreams is exciting. It's such a wonderful way to live your life.
Yep, exactly. And I loved how earlier you talked about you need to understand your employees, you need to understand what their fears are, what their goals are, and all that kind of stuff, and help them, like you said, dream bigger. One of the things that I know that we do in our company is we have vision boards up for all of our employees, and they put on those vision boards, what their dreams are, what they want to achieve in their life, not necessarily with work. In fact, the majority of it's not anything to do with work. It's just in life what they want to achieve. And it does two things for us, at least. One thing it does is it gives them the ability to think about I want to work hard because I want to, do better, make more money, and then I can get my goals and my dreams.
Yep.
So it motivates them. But the other thing is, as the leader, it gives me an insight into what's important to them.
Exactly.
And I love that because I can
motivate.
Yeah, exactly. I walk through the room and I go, okay, he wants this, he wants that. This is what really matters to this guy. It's not the material. It is the time off, his family, things like that. So now I can figure out how to lead them and motivate them based on what they really care about. Yeah. So that's awesome. All right. So how can you really identify what your people, your employees are capable of?
Yeah. So when I think about the first key to unlocking greatness is really understanding the capabilities of your team. Now, I know that especially in like educational cultures, we use the word potential a lot. Like you'll go to a parent conference and it's like, oh, your son has so much potential, but he's really lazy and he's not, you know, doing X, Y, and Z. Like, you know, every parent can raise their hand and say like, oh, I've heard, you know, a teacher say that before. But the thing is that it's not about what the person has in potential. Like, I don't care about that. I want to know what the person is capable of. Like, what are your actual core, hardcore skills that you can do when you're put to the test? And the way to really know what people are capable, I mean, there's a number of different ways, but the ways that I want to share with you of how do you identify what people are truly capable of is giving them an opportunity to show who they really are. So a lot of times people will show you what they're capable of and who they are and what they do, but we don't actually see that as a sign of like, okay, that's that person's capability. Like, that's their threshold right now. And so either I'm keeping them at their threshold and this is where they're going to be in the company, and that's okay. Not everyone has big dreams for themselves and they're okay with being at this level. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different choice in life. Or this person has shows me what they're capable of and what they're made of. You're not aligned with our vision. I need to send you elsewhere. And so one of the ways to have people show you what they're capable of is when they bring you problems or when they bring you challenges of like, I don't know how to solve this, or, you know, can you help me do this? Or this is something that broke. Asking them, what are 2 ways that you're thinking of solving this problem? What are 2 ways that you think we can figure out a solution to this? And here's why you want to do this. One, a lot of times employees are really afraid to use this amazing muscle in their head called the brain, because when they use their brain, that means they have to own the decision, which means they need to own the consequence of the decision. And people don't want to own the consequences. They want the leader to own the consequences. And so they're always coming to you with, how do I do this? How do I do that? Because then Troy, hey, you got to deal with, you know, whatever happens because that was your decision. You want to know, you want to get them to flex their muscle because that's how they can see what they're capable of. The other reason you want them to do that is because that's a benchmark for you to know where you need to invest in training to raise people's skill set. Because if a teacher comes to you and they're like, oh, I'm thinking of solving the lunch issue with this option or this option, and you're like, okay, that option is dangerous and that option is not legal. Interesting. This is where the teacher's brain is. We need to pour in some more training into this area, right? And not just like a silly example. In any company, when your employee comes to you with a problem and they give you options, now you know their functionality of the way they're thinking of solving a problem. And so a lot of times I see leaders, they're like, oh, we're going to do a training on this. I'm like, is that what your people really need? Is that the benchmark of their capabilities and now you're pouring into it? Or is it just like you saw on a Google post and in, you know, Harvard Business Review that that's what companies are doing right now? So that's the first step, I would say.
No, that's absolutely amazing. I was thinking about that too, because, you know, we have the same thing where a lot of times employees will knock on the door and they're like, hey, Troy, you know, how do I solve this? And I've never even thought about saying, okay, how would you solve it? You know, give me 2 options of what you would do. You know, I'm just like, boom, here it is, and go out the door. So that
Here's why people do that. I want to unpack this. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up, Troy, because I want to unpack why leaders do this so they don't beat themselves up. The reason that we do that is for a number of reasons. One, we're really smart and we actually know how to solve the problem. So that's just the first thing. The second thing is speed is one of the biggest values of a company leader. That's how they've built an organization. And so when an employee comes to you and they want you to solve the problem, the fastest way to solve the problem is for you to give the solution, right? And so that's where we come from speed. The third piece is leaders are really great fixers. Like, we really like to fix problems, especially guys. Like, just to bring in gender differences here for a minute, men really like to fix problems. We all know that. What we need to become more as leaders is the navigator. So we need to help the employee navigate their own issues, because if not, we rob them of their own learning cycle of what it means to learn from your mistake. And so I take it a step further when an employee says, you know, well, I don't know any options, or I can't think of anything, or why can't you just tell me, like, you know the answer. I always say, sit here for 5 minutes, think of 2 options. I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. I'll be right back. And now you're giving them a container to think in. And it's also such a level of accountability where the person realizes, okay, I can't do this anymore. I guess I can't just come to Troy and verbal vomit on him and make him answer all my issues. Like, I need to start thinking. They will stop coming to you as much, and your time will actually become even more because you're not spending the time solving people's problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And they become a more valuable employee.
Exactly. Yes.
Right?
Thank you for bringing that up. yes.
Exactly. So I love how so basically right there, and we've really talked about, like, what's the difference between capability and potential, right? I loved how you talked about that. It's like everybody has potential, but we're not paying them for their potential. We're paying them for their capability.
Thank you.
Actually gets done for us. So that's awesome.
Yes.
So, all right. So the next question I have is, why leaders are a mirror of their company? What does that mean? You had mentioned that to me before, that leaders are a mirror of their company. So what does that mean?
Yeah, so that brings us into the second key, which is self-reflection of how you're showing up as a leader. So we all know that, when it comes to our homes, the children in our house is only as strong as the leaders are. And I always say, like, if you want to know where a child's struggling or why they're having a hard time with something, you look at the parents, and the parents can tell you volumes of how the children are really going to turn out and what's going to happen. So one of the stories I always love to share when it comes to the leader as a mirror image is, I was working with a director who was really struggling with clutter in all of her classrooms. There was just clutter on all the counters and just everything was like a mess. And she would run these tours, and her conversion rates were not as high as she wanted them to be. And she was trying to figure out, like, why. Like, the product is good and the teachers are great, and we're in a good location, and everything was like fitting the bill, and she couldn't figure out what was going on. After coming to our event in New York City, where I spoke so much about the director's mirror image, she's like, I really think that our building is a mess. Like, it's not dirty, it's cluttery. Yeah. And she's like, okay, how do I get the building to be less cluttery? And she took a look at herself first, and she's like, okay, let me walk into my office with like a fresh pair of eyes. And she came in and she realized how messy her office was and how cluttered it was, and just cogs like everywhere. And so she spent the first 30 days organizing her office and creating systems around it, and creating a habit where every day for 5 minutes before she left the office, she cleared her desk from any open paperwork, like simple little things. And she said the crazy part is she didn't even tell her teachers anything about this journey. The classroom started to get cleaner. Teachers started to clear paperwork off of the counters. They started to wash the paintbrushes in the sink. Like, they just started doing it because she started it on her own first. And it also rippled effect into her house, where like her 4-year-old daughter started like organizing her stuffed animals better, and like just not having it all over the house. And like her whole life just became this less cluttered mess. And it's just such a great example of like what you want to see in your company, you have to see in yourself first. And I think it is the hardest part of building a company and scaling a company, because you're constantly looking at yourself. Whatever you want to see in your company that you're not seeing yet, it's like, okay, 1 second, how am I showing up? And it is so hard, because it's so much easier to say, well, we don't pay enough, that's why the teachers are not doing this. Or I can't give the benefits that my competitor gives, that's why they're not doing this. I'm like, no, that's a whole bunch of BS. Like, they're not doing it because you aren't holding them accountable, because you don't believe that you're worthy enough to have people rise to the occasion. Like, you're struggling with your own issues, so your people are showing up that way. And we just give excuses for everything, like the weather, the this, the that. Like, there's excuses for everything. No, look at yourself, and your team will follow you.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's absolutely great, because I was thinking about that. One of the suggestions I've given business owners in the past is along that same line of basically, your company, like you said, I love the way you put it. Your company is a mirror of you. The way I put it is basically that, your appearance or, the face of your company is you. Yeah. And, so what I had one of our clients who was a carpet cleaner, and he like, man, I want to be able to charge more money when I come in the, door, and I can't. I always have to charge the lowest amount. And why is that? And I said, you know what, you need to take a look at your company. And I'm like, all right, so here's what I want you to do. I said, I want you to take a picture of your truck. and, and look at it. I want you to take a picture of you in your uniform. And, and so like he took these pictures and he came back and he looked at it and he's like, oh my gosh, like my truck looks horrible. When I pull up in front of these people's house, there's like paper strewn all over the dashboard, and there's like, coffee cups on the floor.
There you go.
He goes, and then I look at myself and it's like I'm stained and I mean, all these horrible things. And he goes, and then, but I'm walking in this house going, I want you to pay me as much as the other guys that show up in an awesome looking truck and they put on little booties on their feet before they walk in the house. And, and it's like, it's not going to happen. You have to portray that. Your employees have to portray, who you are. And again, like you said, it starts with the leader. If you're not
just your story here that you said just made me think of this amazing book that I think every leader should read. It's called Excellence Wins. And it's by Horst Schultz. He's the founder of the Ritz-Carlton, which everybody knows what that hotel chain is. And he wrote an amazing story in this book, just exactly what you said. He said he went to one of his hotel chains, and he walked into the kitchen and he saw that the dishwasher, the person who washes the dishes, his uniform was like sparkling clean and neat. And he's like, okay, that's really interesting. He comes in like 5 hours later again, he's like sparkling clean. He comes in the next week also clean. So he goes to the kitchen manager and he's like, does this guy do his job? Like, he's the dishwasher person. Like, how? He's like, oh, this guy changes his clothes twice a day. Wow. Because he has so much respect for who he is and how he shows up. Anyways, this guy is now a manager in the Ritz-Carlton in Bali. He moved his way up from the dishwasher all the way up to one of the managers. But I loved what you said. Like, whatever your job is, you're the carpet cleaner. Yeah, you might be dirty. Show up with grace. Show up as the leader. Like, be the person who, even if you're not that person yet, show up as that person.
Yes.
So I love that story that you just shared. Like, it's so powerful.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, like I said, it was amazing, and it changed.
Yes.
The guy changed everything around, making more money, and he's like, wow, he's like such a simple little thing, but it made all the difference in the world.
I'm so happy.
So awesome. Okay, so I got another question for you. Why you need to stop asking, how can I get people to do blank, and start asking different questions?
Yeah. So one of the things I hear all the time is, how can I get my people to do X, and fill in the blank for anything that you want. And I think it's when we think that our people are like, we can get them to do things, or, how much can I squeeze out of them, or whatever it is. And they're not towels. We're not looking to see what we can extract from them. They're not robots. They are humans, a lady or a gentleman who has a life, who is someone's daughter, who is somebody's son, who is somebody's spouse, who's someone else's father. And what we really need to be asking ourselves is, how do I create an environment that invites people to want to do it for themselves? So I'm going to repeat that. How can we design an environment that invites people to want it for themselves, not to want it for you? Because wanting it for you is only going to last as long as the motivation or the gimmicks or, the $5 gift cards that you give out. Yes. You want it to want it for themselves. And that's, like you were saying, like that vision board, or those goals of like, what are the person's personal visions? But just to take this on a tactical level, right? Like, how do we design this environment? Like, how do we actually do this? One of the biggest things that directors or any leader is going to be doing is having hard conversations. As a company leader, once you get past like, okay, I don't solve all these issues anymore, I have a manager who takes care of all the problems, the hardest conversations are coming to you. Like, should we hire this person? Should we let this person go? Is this a good investor? Is this the right partner for our company? Should we, give to this charity? Are they aligned with our business? Like, you're going to be answering those questions and making those decisions. And you're also going to be having hard conversations as far as, okay, these two employees don't work together really well. Like, how do we help them get along better? This, person who's in charge of this sales team isn't getting along with this really high-end client who's bringing in multiple 7 figures. Like, do we take it off of his plate? How is that going to bruise his ego? Like, I could go on and on.
Yes.
And so because you're having all of these conversations, the emotional intelligence level of the leader, I think, is one of the most amazing things to invest in in yourself as a person. Your ability to really sustain hard conversations, even in the face of any kind of adversity that's going to be thrown at you. So I'll give you an example of the four thing that I created, which is called the 4 shields of a difficult conversation. So anytime you're going to have a conversation with an employee, a client, or anyone, the moment things get hard, they are going to bring up one of these 4 components. Crying, which is very common in the early childhood industry because we have a lot of females. And so crying is definitely the number one method of, this is how I'm going to get out of the conversation. Blaming is huge. Like, it's their fault. It's that fault. Hurricane Dorian made us do that. Like, every excuse under the world, like blaming. Deflection is the third one. So deflecting the responsibility onto somebody else or deflecting it off of yourself. Like, you know, yeah, that's not really my responsibility, or okay, fine, whatever, you're the boss, I guess I have to do that. And then victim, like, oh my gosh, you don't understand. My mom just had this. I just got this call. Look, life happens. Nobody gets an easy pass in life, okay? Nobody gets a life where a whole week goes by and nothing happened to them, right? Something's going to go on. The dishwasher is going to break, the washing machine leak, this thing happened, you got to call. Like, life is going to happen. And I think the more that we can create an environment where we show our people, we are all human. Life happens to all of us. And the reason why the leader shows up better is because they have better coping mechanisms to deal with life. Like, I have life happen to me every hour of the day. I have 4 kids, but like literally every half hour of the day. The reason I can get shit done is because I have better coping mechanisms. I know how to respond to problems better. Like, I don't have a problem-free life. I'm just constantly investing in how I can solve problems better.
Right.
So that's like, those are the questions you want to be asking more.
So I love these 4 shields. So
yes. we can dive into one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's dive into some of these shields. And, you know, because as you were saying them, I'm like, yep, heard that. Like, you know, I mean, I totally relate to that. So let's dive into that a little bit farther. Like, when, you know, pick a shield and, you know, and get like, how can we give some examples of like how to overcome those?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So one of the shields I think that are the most common is blaming, right? And so let's, you know, if you want, Tony, we can actually do some role playing here and you can give me an example and we can like go back and forth on blaming. If you want to do that. But
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So, but before we do that, just to unpack a little bit more of like each of those specific shields. So crying is typically when the person feels ashamed that they are, oh my gosh, like I'm not living up to their expectation, or they're going to find me out, or whatever it is. And their default is to start crying. And the first thing to realize about crying is data. Crying is data of like, okay, this is this person's coping mechanism. They cry when they're not getting what they want or when they're feeling ashamed. And the first thing you want to do when someone starts crying is say, you know, I'm happy to give you a minute or whatever it is. If you want, I can come back in 2 to 3 minutes. And then when I come back, we'll continue the conversation. Sometimes that could be really alarming to the person who's crying. They're like, what? You're going to still make me go through this? Like, I'm crying. Yep, we're doing this. We're doing this because, you know, you're not 3 anymore. And crying doesn't, you know, just diffuse any issue. So I think that's the first thing when it comes to crying. But with blaming, I want to talk about why people blame. Okay. So we grow up in a society where blaming is something that we have done our whole life. Who spilled the milk? Who took my keys? Right? That's blaming, right? We don't consciously feel like we're blaming, but we are, right? Who took out the snack? Who left the lights on? Who didn't flush the toilet? Who woke up the baby? Like, we do this all the time, right? And then in our companies also, it's like, who didn't respond to the person's thing, or how. So we live in a society, we're all guilty of this. My hand is raised also. We live in a society where the questions that we use of blaming are what rolls off our tongue a lot faster. Because of that, people are really good at hiding their mistakes. They become really good at like, I didn't do it, this, like because it's their survival mechanism.
Yes.
And so what we want to do is we want to shift from culture of blame to culture of accountability. And so asking different questions. And I go into depth in this in just a great worksheet that I created where you guys can get it, and we'll, give that in the show notes here. But just to explain a little bit more about what I mean by that. The difference between the culture of blame and the culture of accountability. When somebody says, who made this mistake, right? That's the blame. When we're in a culture of accountability, it's, is there something in our system that increased the likelihood of this mistake? So now what we're doing is we're pointing fingers at a system that the humans created, but the system probably messed up somewhere. So how can we fix the system? That switch allows breathing room for the person to say, you know what, I actually think that, this part of the system could be better used, or whatever it is. Because you've shifted the spotlight off of them and you've put it on the system. So now their brain can think of a solution. I'll give you another example. In a culture of blame, it's like, who did it, or what they did was wrong. Whereas opposed to in the culture of accountability, it's going over to the person and saying, hey, Sarah, mom reached out and is complaining that there was no response for the past 3 days. What happened? Right? So you're not saying, why didn't you respond? Whatever it is, it's like, what happened here? So again, accountability.
Yeah.
So those are just some of the top things of like the difference in culture of blame, culture of accountability.
Yeah, I love that. That's absolutely great because like you said, a lot of times we point the finger immediately and they get real defensive and nothing's accomplished, you know? And that's my thing is like, and I'm going to take some of the things you've taught today and apply that into our business as well. Because a lot of times what I'll do is I'll say, okay, look, I know who made the mistake, and I'd be like, okay, look, tell me what happened. And then I have them tell me exactly what happened. Well, this is what happened. Okay. So they're kind of taking ownership. Like, this is what happened. And, okay, what did you do? This is what I did. Okay, great. Right. All right. And then, after that's done, we don't need to dwell on, you did something wrong. The very next thing is, okay, how do we fix this? And then how do we prevent this in the future? And I love that. It's that shifting of, you've made a mistake, acknowledge you did it, and then now let's fix it so it never happens again, and I want you to be a part of the solution,
Yeah. So going back to, we made the mistake, acknowledge it. So one of the challenges that I'll give to all your listeners is in the next week, when you make a mistake, because we all make mistakes at least once a week, when you make the mistake, how are you going to acknowledge it on a public level so that your team starts seeing that, one, you're human, you also make mistakes, and two, you're ready to acknowledge when you mess up or whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be something massive. Share with them something simple that you messed up on or whatever it is. But what you're starting to show people is this is a company that, because what happens is when we're always blaming people, or we're always like, people are scared, is we create this culture of avoid errors. Like, everyone is just so focused on not making mistakes and avoiding errors. That is not excellence. You want to create an environment where we are focused on achieving excellence. And someone can only be focused on achieving excellence if they're looked at as a problem solver, as someone who's solution oriented, as opposed to, okay, let me just make sure I behave today and I didn't make any mistakes.
Yes.
Right? See the difference between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you 100%. It's their perspective, how they approach every single problem of like, am I going to check the boxes and make sure I don't get in trouble, or am I going to problem solve and go above and beyond for this customer? That's one of the things that I love in our company. We always tell people like, we're not a tech company. We are a customer service company that just happens to own tech.
I love
right?
that. And
that's the same thing for any business. It doesn't matter what business you're in. You're a customer service business, that does something else. Yeah. And that's what we try to teach our people is like, look, it's your job to do whatever you can to make the person happy, within reason, right? And think outside the box and solve their problem. And, and you don't have to go to the manual to do that. Sometimes you got to get creative and you got to solve, think of solutions yourself, and then do it. And if it doesn't work, then we learn from that. But do our very best to try to make sure that the customer is taken care of first. So
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's really important. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so much fun. Any other last tips or tricks for, like how to be, well, at first, before we do that, I just want to acknowledge what you said about, admitting your own mistakes. And I think that's one of the things that business owners, we have a hard time doing. And and it may not be that like we don't want to, say that we're wrong, because maybe in our personal lives, we're very, quick to say, oh, I made a mistake. But for some reason, when we're the leader, right, of the business, we feel this obligation of like, I have to be perfect. I can't let them know that I screw up every once in a while, because then they're not going to want to follow me anymore. And, that's wrong. Like, if you really look at it, it's, letting them know that, hey, you know what, I'm human. I'm just like you. I do make mistakes, but what matters is that I'm quick to fix them. And then I put things in place to make sure that I never do it again. And I think that's important. I love that you said that, because I know myself, as an owner in my company, it's like, man, I don't want to admit that I don't know exactly what I'm doing here, or that maybe I handled that one the wrong way, because, we want to be perfect in the eyes of our employees, because we think that people follow a perfect leader. But in actuality, that's not who people are looking for. People are looking for someone who's going to lead them, that they can relate to, and, that can be like them, but teach them how to be better.
I love what you said. And I think the part that we like, for the perfectionists out there, or the people that want everything to be perfect, the part of me that allows myself to show up in that perfectionist mindset is the part of, I need to make sure that I'm not belittling my team every single time. Like, that's where I want to be flawless. I need to make sure that I'm flawless in that. When I'm holding somebody accountable, I'm not raising my voice, or I'm not, making them feel less than, or whatever it is. Like, that's the part that I do want to show up flawlessly, where I'm creating a space where I'm not, throwing my own emotions on my people. But with everything else, I make mistakes all the time. I'm young, I'm learning, I don't know everything. Like, teach me. But where I do want to show up really well, and where I'm hard on myself, is like, I want to make sure that I'm always speaking respectfully. Like, I think that there are certain things that you could say, yes, I always have to do this, or whatever it is. Kindness, respect, dignity. Like, yes, those are things we always want to make sure that we show up as. But then when we're admitting our mistake, or whatever it is, we don't do it in a way where we're like, oh, I made this mistake. Well, that's because, you didn't do X, Y, and Z. No. That's not called admitting your mistake. Like, don't do it that way. So I just love what you said. Yes, people want to follow humans, people that make mistakes, people that are leaders, because that's inspiring. Because it's like, wow, look how far Troy has come. Look what he's built. And he's human. He makes mistakes. That means that I can do this too. Like, when we're always perfect, we don't lead an inspiring company, because nobody thinks they can be like you. And we want to create leaders. So I love what you said.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So before we go, any last tips or tricks that you would give a business owner to really, help their team rise up and do better?
Yeah. So the greatest tip that I give people is called intentional observations, which I call hunting. And so when a hunter is going out, they're very specific. Well, if they're hunting properly, they have a license of what they're allowed to hunt for, and, all of that kind of stuff. And so I follow the same concept of, like, when you're going in to hunt for the goodness in your team, you want to hunt with a careful observation. So it's like, okay, this is our new employee, Sam. He works with our highest end 7-figure clients. And one of the greatest skills that he needs is his ability to do X. Well, let me hunt for when he is doing that already, and start, looking at some of the emails that he CCs you on, or go into his office, or see some of the observations. And when you see them showing up in that way, in those capabilities, gratitude. Showing gratitude that you are grateful that they're an asset to your team and they're showing up that way. So here's an example. When you go into, I'll just give a childcare example. So when you want to create a culture where teachers are, speaking respectfully to children, or using positive language instead of, like, don't run, or whatever it is, like, they're using positive language. go into the classroom and hunt for that, because whatever you're hunting for, you will find, period. You will find it. Whatever we focus on in life is what we see, right? When you want to buy a Toyota, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, everybody's got a Toyota, right? When you're pregnant, it's like, whoa, everybody's pregnant. No, you're just pregnant now. So you're looking at all the pregnant ladies, right? So it's the same thing. Get into the classroom. What are you looking for? You saw the teacher do X, Y, and Z. Gorgeous. Go write her a thank you card. Record a voice memo. Send her a beautiful email. Show her that you notice that she's showing up that way, because now she wants to please you, because that's the law of reciprocity, and she's going to continue to show up that way. And that's one of the greatest keys in unlocking greatness is gratitude. It is phenomenal how simple it is and how many leaders do not do enough of gratitude in their organization. So I would say if there's one takeaway, please show your employees more gratitude, and not in raises and bonuses and gift cards, in your words of specificity of why you are grateful that they are assets in your company.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, there was a study done recently that talked about that. And they actually said that giving somebody a compliment creates the same emotion as if you were to give them a gift, like money or a card or things like that. So, a lot of times we look for like, oh, I'll give them a raise, I'll give them this, I'll give them that. But that may not be what they're really looking for. A lot of them, they just want, recognition of like, hey, you did an amazing job. And that's worth more than the money itself. So I really love that you said that, because gratitude is one of the best ways to get your employees to, want to work harder and want to step up, because they want that gratitude and they want that recognition for what they're doing. So awesome.
But even going back to what, I just want to add one more thing, going back to what you said about the goals, like what the personal goals are. Like one teacher, one of her big things was she has a huge family, and she just wanted to eat lunch with her husband before all the kids came home. And the director hired a substitute for 2 hours, cost her $20. And the teacher was able to go home and have lunch with her husband, right? If you gave the teacher $20, she'd laugh at you. She's a veteran of 30 years. Don't give me $20.
Right.
But what she did was she let her go home and have lunch. Like, what do your people want? They don't want $20. They don't want $100. They want to have lunch with their husband. They want to go watch their child's soccer game. They want it, like, that's what they want. Give them what they want. It doesn't cost you anything. $20, come on. So I just want to end with that. Like, what do your people want? So, and they could go to chanie.me/4shields, the number 4 shields, to download the PDF.
Awesome. And again, tell them where they're going to get that PDF one more time.
So it's an entire worksheet on different scenarios of the culture of blame and culture of accountability. And then I give some role-playing scripts of how you could show up better in conversations when people start blaming each other.
Awesome. Well, Connie, thank you so much for being on here. I really appreciate it. And I hope everyone, took notes and they're going to start applying to their business, because one of the best ways to grow your business is to be a leader and be a better leader, and to help your people rise up and be better than they are today. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was fun. Thanks.